Hi, everyone, and thank you to those who have joined us today. Welcome to Maximizing Your PSAP's Potential, Leveraging Quality Assurance. Now, this is the second installment of our NICE Inform series, so we appreciate all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Now, we got a lot of positive feedback after our first session that we hosted in early February, which covered some questions and answers on the NICE Inform application. So after the webinar, we received a lot of feedback on quality assurance and utilizing the NICE Inform Evaluator tool specifically. So we went from a Q&A the first session to a QA topic the second session. So if you have the NICE Inform Evaluator tool, we hope that this session sheds some light on the capabilities it has and how you can use it in your PSAP. And now if you don't have a QA program implemented and aren't using the NICE Inform Evaluator tool, hopefully this conversation will show you how it can help you improve your operational efficiency and your employee retention. More trained and knowledgeable employees equals more satisfied employees. So a few housekeeping items to review before we get started. All participants have been placed in listen-only mode with your microphone muted. The session is being recorded, so it will be available to watch on demand afterwards. The first session of our Inform series can also be found on our website or our YouTube channel for your reference. Please participate by commenting in the chat window on the side of your screen. If we can't get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you individually. And then just a quick request that when the session is over and you exit the platform, please submit your feedback by answering the 2 survey questions that pop up on your screen. So let's move into our next slide. So to start off, for anyone who is unfamiliar with Wilmac, we're a technology and managed service provider based in Rochester, New York. We also have hubs in Toronto and in New York City. Now, our history is rooted in recording technology, and we've been privileged to be serving public safety organizations, like many of our attendees today, for over 30 years now. So to start things off, I'm Emily Miller. I am the Director of Marketing at Wilmac, and I will be moderating the session today, popping in and out. Now, these are the 2 people that you want to know. Our first speaker is John McDonnell, Wilmac's Public Safety Sales Director. Many of you have worked with John to map out your solution and Wilmac's support for your PSAP's needs. Now, he's been with the company for 4 years now and has worked extensively with PSAPs to ensure their recording solution is the best fit for them. And our second speaker is Mark Huber, John's counterpart in the public safety space. He's the director of our pre-sales engineering and has been at Wilmac for close to 25 years now. Mark has incredible knowledge of the NICE Inform solution, and he'll be pulling up our demo system periodically throughout this discussion to show you some feature functionality of NICE Inform Evaluator. So to give you an idea of what John and Mark will be discussing, they'll start the conversation by reviewing common misconceptions associated with quality assurance and public safety, and then the benefits it can bring to your PSAP. And if you haven't noticed yet, we're big advocates of quality assurance here, and we believe it can bring a lot of value to your organization. But after that, they'll be discussing different use cases of the NICE Inform Evaluator tool using the demo to walk you through it. Like I mentioned before, please submit any questions you may have in the comments section on the side of your screen. Throughout the presentation, we'll answer those questions for you, and if we miss any, we'll follow up with you individually afterwards. So I'll actually start our session off today with a poll question, just to make sure you haven't fallen asleep already with my spiel. So I will bring that up now. And the question reads, how much of a priority is employee staffing and retention for you? So the options are, it's my number 1 issue, it's on my list, but not number 1, it's not too important, and it's not even on my radar. So let's see who else. Got some responses coming in. Give everyone a few more seconds. Interesting results. I'll be launching those in a second. I'll give everyone a few more seconds. Okay. So let's close that poll out. Thank you to everyone who participated, and let's show the results. So 78% of you said it's my number 1 issue. So I'm glad you're here today so we can hopefully provide some insight for you, and you can give us some feedback on how you use the tool afterwards. And then 22% said it's on my list, but not number 1. No one clicked it's not too important or it's not even on my radar. So that's good to hear. So thank you for your responses. So now with that being said, I'll turn it over to John now to kick things off.
Great, thanks, Emily. Morning, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. Like Emily mentioned, I'm going to start by running through some misconceptions that we hear when we talk about QA and NICE Inform Evaluator and what it really should be doing for your center. QA isn't something that we just want to check off our to-do list. Okay, we did it. What's next? It should be a tool that we use to improve aspects of our center. And if QA is being prioritized, it really should be being prioritized in your center. So what we're really trying to tackle today are what are the features of NICE Inform's QA application evaluator, and how can we improve our QA and our center as a whole, and how can we make QA easier for us? Like Emily said, the easier the QA is for you, the more your team will do it, and the more your dispatchers and your employees will benefit from it. So I think we'll run through some great pieces today, hopefully some new nuggets of info that you guys can all take away from this. So some common misconceptions, or really the biggest misconception that we hear is we don't have time to do this. I barely have enough resources to man my center. How am I supposed to also be doing QA? And we talk to PSAPs all over the Northeast US, Ontario, Canada, and it's without a doubt the number one thing we hear. We don't have time. And we completely understand these centers are high stress, and we look at the greater goal of what we do. QA seems like it can kind of be the low man on the priority totem pole, and it often gets put on the back burner. When things get hectic, when things get busy, seems to be the first thing that falls by the wayside. And in the same breath, when we talk to centers about the biggest woes or current pain points, similar to the poll we just took, employee turnover. We can't get folks who want to work. We need stronger dispatchers. And I think that's a common thread no matter where we are, but I do think there's a direct correlation between the two. Maybe not the only reason, but obviously a big player in this. So the best way to improve employee retention is to create stronger employees. So think back to your first day as a dispatcher, or put yourselves in the shoes of a new dispatcher in today's world where everything is put under a microscope. It can be scary at first, and checking out or quiet quitting, or whatever you want to call it, might be an easier option than actually improving. And what can be even more difficult is finding out where one needs to improve. How do we even know where our weaknesses are? Are dispatchers asking the right questions? Are they moving quickly? Are they moving through the systems accurately and timely? So really, the more prepared they are, the more knowledge that they have, the better that they'll do, and the more satisfied they'll be in their professional careers. So theme of today is using QA to improve employee turnover, creating stronger dispatchers, and how NICE Evaluator can make QA easier for you and your team. So that kind of wraps up my quick spiel. Emily, I think we have another poll question.
Yeah. Thanks, John, for talking about those misconceptions and benefits. I'll bring up the second poll question now for everyone. So the question reads, how much QA do you do today? And your options are none, we do not conduct any QA; minimal, we perform QA once in a while; moderate, we do it consistently; and extensive, QA is an integral part of our operations. So I'll give everyone some time to put those in. Starting it off hot with 2 poll questions, so hope everyone's staying on their toes. Got some answers coming in. Give everyone about 10 more seconds. Okay, here we go. Closing that out now, and we'll share the results. So 11% of you said none, 56% minimal, 22% moderate, and 11% extensive. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for filling that out, everybody. Well, like you're saying, Emily, it looks like we have quite a spread of where everyone is in their QA process. And I think no matter how much QA you do, if you're a little behind or if it's a giant priority in your center, I think hopefully today we'll get some good tips and tricks to take away from the meeting. Okay. So I think now we're going to get into Evaluator a little bit. So not so much a full demo, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but we'll get into depth in a few tools specifically. So to start, we're going to run through a serious time saver in Evaluator, and that's going to involve our QA templates. So we'll begin by reviewing how to upload APCO and NINA templates into Evaluator, and you can customize your own templates, which we'll go over right after this, but often you're going to want to follow these templates. They're a good baseline. Also, the simple upload is much quicker than creating these custom templates, so hopefully this will be a good time saver for you. So Mark, I will hand it over to you for the templates.
Right, thanks, John. So before you can start a QA program in your center, you need to have an evaluation form. An evaluation form is really just a series of questions that a evaluator is going to answer while they're listening to recordings of calls that happened in your center. So APCO and NINA have helped you out a lot. They've created these templates for you, so you don't have to start from scratch. You can bring in these templates into your system and start right from there. And you can use them right out of the box, or you can customize them. So let's talk a little bit about how to do that and how it works. So I'm in the NICE Inform system right now, and I'm going to go to the drop down here to my template manager or template designer. And from here, I can load new evaluation forms. I can do an import. So if you don't already have these templates, you can reach out to us here at Wilmac and we'll be happy to provide them for you. They're available at no cost. So I have them right here on my desktop, and there are 6 of them. There are 3 for call taking and 3 for dispatching, and then 1 each of those for EMS, fire, and police. So all I have to do to import one of these templates is just select it, open that template, and it'll bring it right into the NICE Inform system for you. So that'll show up in my evaluation form list right here. There's the one that I just imported. And if I double click that, I can bring up that form. You see that it brings it in a draft mode in case you want to make changes to it. And then if you go to the questions tab, you can take a look at what is built into the form. So it's made up of a few different sections. You've got interview questions, you've got CAD skills, telephone protocol, etc. And within each section, you have a number of questions. And each question is worth a certain number of points, depending on how the evaluator answers that question for that recording. Now we can customize these questions. The questions you see here are fairly standard yes, no, NA type questions with radio buttons, but Inform allows you to create a variety of custom different question types. So you see over here on the left, there's about a dozen or so pre-canned question types within the system, and those are usually adequate for most folks, but you could create custom ones if you like. So let's just do that really quick and show you how you create a custom question. I'm going to go to new question type right here, and I can give it a name. And then I can say, do I want this to be a radio button like the ones that you see here? Or you could also do it as a drop down like the drop down we see here, or you can do a slider. Let's do a slider so I can show you how that works. Go to next, and then I can create a list of responses for that question. I can have whatever I want. Excellent. Very good. Good. Fair. Horrible. Whatever I want to create, I can create as many of these responses as I want, and you see that it adds them to the list here. And that's all there is to creating a custom question type. And you see that it shows up right down here in the list of question types. Now, if I go back to my evaluation form, I can add a custom question into my form. So you can also add your own sections too, by the way. Why don't I show you how to do that? So let's create a new section. We'll call this in our demo section. Okay, and that'll show up at the bottom of my list here. And maybe I want to move that up to the top, so I can use my move buttons here to get it up to the top. Okay, now I got that section here at the top. Now I can add a question. What is my question text? How did the dispatcher do? Explain your evaluation. Whatever you want to type in there. And then in the question type dropdown, you'll see all of these question types in the list here, including that custom one that I just created. Now you can set these up as either scoring questions or informational questions. Some agencies like to use informational questions that don't have a score to them, that just allow you to answer a question in a subjective way. Or you can put the scoring on it, and that gives you a numerical value depending on how you answer the question. That's up to you. You can mix and match these within a form. You could create a whole form with no scoring at all if you like. So if you do information, you see those get grayed out. But let's do this as a scoring question. You can set how many points it's worth. Maybe I want it to be worth 150. And you can even set a negative value for failure. Like if they do something really bad and you want it to count against them, you can put in a negative score for question failures. Okay, and here are all of the custom responses that I created when I made that question. And if you want to customize the point value of each of these, you can, but you see that the system automatically spread out those numbers for me. Okay, and then you can also make this a failure question if you like I was saying before. Okay, you can also make these conditional, whereas depending on how this question is answered, you might want to skip an entire section or skip the entire form. So maybe this is well, this is not applicable because of the call type. You could skip that entire section of the form. Okay, and that's all there is to adding a question to your form. And you see that, whoops, that put it down in the bottom on me. And here you can see how a slider works, whereas it starts with excellent, and I can just drag that over to show the different values. And you see the scoring changing over here on the left as I do that. From there, all I have to do is save my form, and I'm done. So now I have a form created, and I'm ready to do evaluations. So John, you want to talk a little bit about scheduling?
Yeah. So I think that's, just a quick final thought on the evaluator templates. Many of our power users create brand new templates for specific initiatives, maybe for a first few days of a dispatcher's career. But many stick to the pre-made templates. It helps really speed the process along, and they are really great options as templates as a whole. But not every shoe fits. Totally up to you and your center's needs. And if you want some assistance, obviously you can tell Mark can zip through these pretty quick. We can assist with that. But like you're saying, Mark, now you have your templates. What do you actually? And now it's time to actually do some QA. So I think there's one trick that was eye-opening for me, and that's scheduling. So just a quick highlight. With this tool, you can automate pulling of calls either randomly or through a list of parameters. So you don't really have to. If you've ever went to evaluate a call and you pull one up and it's a 2-second radio blip, we want to avoid stuff like that. Imagine coming in at the beginning of the shift and you have a list of calls already pulled to evaluate. So, these solutions in your center should make your life easier. And I think this is one of the biggest ones when we're talking about evaluators. So Mark.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So I see a lot in centers where people will not use the scheduler and will go into reconstruction and search for calls. And you can manually evaluate any call that you want within reconstruction. That's perfectly fine. But we do find that that's a pretty time-consuming process, that you do have to cherry pick through a list of recordings to find a good one to evaluate. And then for the people being evaluated, sometimes they can interpret that as bias, where, well, the evaluator really likes my neighbor operator, but doesn't like me. So they're always picking my bad calls and always picking their good calls. So by using a scheduling tool, it adds some objectivity into the process. Not only does it make it faster for you, but it also makes it objective where the system is picking the calls. I'm not picking them. So you can't say that I'm picking all your bad ones, right? So the scheduler is here in the evaluator section up here in the top right, a little picture of a calendar. And we can create a schedule in here, give it a name. Now we can do this based on basic telephony data, or if your center is doing a CAD integration, you can do it based on CAD data as well. So that opens up all of the information that you have in your CAD system about incidents to do evaluations. That can make for a really powerful evaluation process, because now you're evaluating entire incidents rather than individual calls, and you can search by particular incident types and so forth. So that can not only speed up the process for you, but also enable you to target exactly what you're looking for. But if your center doesn't have that, you can do just basic telephony data. So we'll look at that for today. And we can tell the system to select either all calls meeting the criteria, which could be a very large number of calls. Or more commonly, you would want to do a certain number of calls per operator per time period. So for example, maybe you want to do 5 calls per operator per month or something along those lines. So when you set this target, what the system will do is it will randomly go through all of the recordings for that operator, and it will find 5 of them for you, so that you don't have to go through and cherry pick through the calls to find them. Now, if you're doing screen recording in your center, and we'll touch on this in a little bit more in a moment, but if you're doing screen recording, we can set to prefer calls that have screen recordings on them. And so if you're doing screen recording, you would want to check that box, because then you're only going to get calls that do have screens on them. Okay. Now here we have some filter criteria where you could really get some granular filtering to look for specific types of calls. So a common one would be duration. Like John said, you don't want to evaluate a 2-second radio transmission. You want to evaluate a 911 call. So you could specify a duration. You could specify certain resources that you want to look for in the list here. And that's just a matter of hitting add, selecting the filter criteria from the field list here, and then entering in what you're looking for. Okay. Next, you want to select which form you're going to use. So you see that the form that I created earlier is not in the list, and that's because I forgot to do a very important step, which is to change my form from draft mode into active mode. So the form will not be available until you activate it. So you can play with it to your heart's content until you feel it's ready to go, and nobody can use it until you mark it as active. So I didn't do that, so I'll just select one of the ones in the list here. Okay. Next, who do you want to target to be evaluated? So I might want to go to my group of operators, and here I see the people in there. I could either add individuals, or I could add all of them, whoever I want to add into the list there. Okay. Then who is going to be doing the scoring, the evaluator? So that might be your supervisors. I see I have nobody in my list of supervisors. Not quite sure why. Only on a demo does that happen. And of course, it's not going to let me proceed. Isn't that interesting? Okay, let's try that. That'll work. Okay, so now I've created my schedule, and this schedule will run daily and pick calls for you. And as far as when that actually runs, that's an administrative setting. Usually, I think the default is 1 o'clock in the morning. This will run so that when you come into work in the morning, those calls will be in your list, ready to be evaluated. And this is the list that you see when you go to Evaluator. So no doing searches, no trying to find calls. You just come in, you log in, you go to Evaluator, and here they are in the list, ready to be scored. Any thoughts you want to add there, John?
Yeah, I think I mentioned, but this was eye-opening for me. I think of today's kind of demo, everything we run through, I think if there's a couple things that you take away, this is one of the biggest time savers there are. It can take a little work to set up, but we're happy to help with that. So please let us know if you need assistance. But this is a huge time saver. One of my favorite features in Evaluator for sure. So switching gears a little bit, next I want to cover something that Mark just touched on, a little lesser known when you think of QA. A lot of the features that we've covered so far directly tie into the baseline QA process. We can't really QA without them, but we want to review screen recording. So screen recording can be useful in a few different ways, but using it as a QA tool can be very telling. So while you're QAing, you can see what the dispatcher is seeing on their screen. So imagine they pick up their phone, their screen starts recording. You can tell if they're running through correct protocols. Are they visibly confused about what they should be accessing? Are they, can you see their mouse all over the place? Is it a little panicky? Are they on Facebook? Is something, like that? Or is it a technical issue? We actually work with the PSAP in Long Island who is having CAD issues, and their vendor refused to acknowledge those issues. So they got screen recording to document the errors that we were getting. Obviously, an extreme example, but maybe you see a call that was way too long, so you pull it up and immediately see that there was a technical error and it wasn't the dispatcher's fault. So I think it's a great way to add an additional element to the QA process. It gives you a really good holistic view of what's happening in your center. So Mark, I'll turn back over to you to run through some screen recording details.
All right, so I do have one evaluation in my demo system here that has screen recordings in it. So let me bring that up and show you what it would look like. So here you have in the resources list, one row for the recorded screens and one row for the audio for the operator. So when I go to play the recording, you're going to see the screens while you're hearing the audio, and it runs them simultaneously in real time so that you can hear the operator talking to the caller in tandem with seeing what they're doing on their screens. So this really gives you a good view of, why did they say this at this particular time, or why was there this long pause? Maybe there was an error message coming up on the screen that they had to deal with, or something along those lines. It really gives you some good context into why the call flowed the way that it did. So you'll see as I'm listening to this and it's playing through, there's this little thumbnail down here of the screen. Of course, that's kind of hard to see. So let me open up the Insight panel, and I can pop that screen into the Insight panel so I can see it a little bit better. Maybe stretch this out so I see it better. Now this shows a single screen. Most of your centers do have multiple screens that your operators and dispatchers are using. So that's fully supported in the Inform system. I think we've done as many as 6 screens on one operator position. So you can see all of those screens. You could focus it on one individual screen if you want. That's configurable for you as far as what you want to record. But anyway, you can kind of see the screen moving around here while we're listening to the audio up above. And I can just kind of let that run as I go over here to my evaluation form, read through the questions and answer the questions as I go. Of course, you can fast forward and rewind while you're doing that if you miss something while you're going through your questions and so forth. Fill in your evaluation form, and that gives you that holistic view of why the call flowed the way that it did.
Yeah, I think.
John, any comments?
I think, like you were saying, it really helps round out each QA, each evaluation, and really gives you a holistic view. It's fairly underutilized when you think, don't you say, Mark? I mean, only a handful of at least Wilmac customers are using it. But I think it can, if you want to improve your QA, I think it's a great addition into kind of the whole picture. So that kind of wraps up screen recording, changing gears a bit again, but keeping it in the same idea of getting a better holistic picture. We want to talk about the Reporter app that goes hand in hand with Evaluator. It often helps to take a 30,000-foot view of how your QA is progressing, and Reporter is really how you take a look at that. It's really a quick dashboard that gives you a holistic view of your QA process, as well as a bunch of other data, but you can absorb it in a quick glance. The ultimate goal here, we're doing all this QA work. It's not just to throw into the system and never access it again, but rather get some meaningful insights about what we're doing every day. I think the best way to go through Reporter is obviously to show it. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you for a quick walkthrough.
All right, so I'm going to head over to the Reporter here. The first thing I see when I go into the Reporter is the dashboard, and that gives you a visualization of the reports that you can build in the Inform system. So this is just a quick example. Let's jump over and take a look at the reports, and then I'll come back to the dashboard and show you how you can customize this. So I'm going to go over here to the right and open up the Reporter panel. I've got a few pre-built reports in the system, but you can create your own reports just by going here to New Report. And let me just stretch this out a little so you can see it better. So there's 2 types of reports that you have in the NICE Inform system. There are call data reports, which give you some metrics about the recordings that the system is capturing, both phone and radio recordings. And then you've got evaluation reports, and those are reports that summarize all of the data from those evaluation forms that your evaluators are filling out. So the call data reports are things like, what's my call activity over time? What resources have the most activity? What radio activity do I have over time? So you got some call reports, you got some radio reports that will give you some insight into, what kind of activity are we having. These are great for seeing trends, like you can see what your busiest time of the day is, and that can help you with making sure that you have adequate staffing levels at each time during the day. But we want to take a look at the evaluation reports today. So there's about a dozen or so templates for evaluation built into the system. Things like averaging out the scores for the entire form, for the question, for each individual operator or dispatcher, and then looking at trends over time. So we can create a report. Let's do a scoring trend per month report here. And that lets me name it. Okay. Okay. If I want, I can make this report public. That means anybody can see it. If I leave that unchecked, only I can see it. So this is a per user thing. If you want to create your own reports just for yourself, no problem. Everybody who logs into Inform can create their own reports. All right, what data do I want to go into this report? I can show any time frame, or I could show a specific time range. And then what people do I want this report to apply to? So it could look at a specific group of people. Maybe you only want to look at dispatchers, not call takers, that kind of thing. Maybe you're creating a report for your new hires. So you want to look at people who have been around for less than 90 days. You could do something like that as well. Okay, so you can select the people you want this to apply to, and then what evaluation form do you want to use for these folks? Okay. And then save that report. Hopefully I picked a good time range. If not, I'll go back and run one of the standard ones. Okay, so we're going to run that report. And of course, I get no data because I selected a time range with no calls in it. Again, that's one of those things that only happens on a live demo. So let me run this one, and we can see kind of a visual of what this particular report might look like. This shows a scoring trend of different types of calls over time. So you can see, are we trending up? Are we trending down? Was there a particular month where there was a challenge because there was a major incident, or whatever? I mean, those trends can tell you a lot of things, right? So once you've built your report templates, now you can drop those onto a dashboard. You could run these ad hoc anytime you want, but the beauty of the dashboard is it's running it continuously for you, and you can bring up that dashboard every day and take a look at it without having to manually run every report every day, right? Okay, so in this example, I have 4 reports built into my dashboard. I have a couple of call data reports. I have a couple of evaluation reports. But if I want to customize that, I just go up to the Customize button up here. You can set a few different layouts from anywhere from 1 report to 6 reports in a couple of different ways. And then once you have your outline selected there, you can pick your report from down in the list here. The ones with the green checks are already on there, so don't select those. Let's take one of these, and I can just drop that right up onto my dashboard, say okay. And in a couple seconds, it'll refresh. I got my new layout, and you'll see my new report now showing with the other 4 that I had up there before. Okay, so that kind of gives you a great way to keep a bird's eye view on what's going on in your center.
Yeah, I think a common use case that we see quite a bit is, similar to a bar chart, a bar graph up in the left corner, is you can see which one of your operators, which one of your dispatchers have lower QA scores. So, you come in and you see John and Emily have poor QA scores from last week or yesterday. And that's where we're going to focus our energy. So you're not constantly, QAing your best employees, but giving the attention to who really needs it. And like Mark mentioned, Reporter has a lot of features and functionality that fall outside of QA. When are your busiest times? Who tend to be the busiest operators, stuff like that. So Reporter's a great tool that can really tell you a lot.
Yeah.
So
one of the other common things I see, John, is the report of scores by question. So you can see here's a particular question that everybody is doing poorly on. Maybe we need to focus on that particular skill for the entire team rather than just an individual who's not doing well.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like what we talked about in the beginning of the webinar. Where do we put our resources? How do we know where our weaknesses are? So I think that's a great one. I think that's really everything in Evaluator that we wanted to cover today. So, I think no matter where you are in your QA timeline, there are some tips and tricks. Hopefully you can use an evaluator to speed along your processes. Again, the easier QA is for you, the more you'll do it, and the better your team will be for it. So hopefully you took something away from today. And if you want to learn more about Evaluator or you want a soup to nuts full demo, we're happy to set that up. But I think there was a specific question that you wanted to cover off on, Emily, that we got quite a bit of.
Yeah, so earlier on and thank you both, John and Mark, for sharing your insight. Like John said, I hope this brought some insight to you and some takeaways for your QA program. A question that we received earlier in the registration process that I'm going to direct towards Mark, and if you could bring up the demo again, but would you be able to show us how to check our license in Inform to see if we have Evaluator?
Oh yeah, you bet. Good question, right? So in the demo system, of course, if you see the Evaluator tab up here at the top, you're good to go. You've got it. But if you don't see that Evaluator tab, that could mean one of two things. Either your user account does not have the privilege enabled to use Evaluator, or your system is not licensed for Evaluator. So if that's the case, you need to go see one of your system administrators. And what they can do is they can first check their license. So if they go into their system administration here, take just a moment to come up here, and they take a look at their Inform license right here, you can see if Evaluator is enabled on your system and how many user licenses you have for Evaluator. So if that says yes and you have a number higher than 0, then you can turn that on for your users. And in order to enable it for the users, all we have to do is go to our user administration, go to one of your profiles, and make sure that the Evaluator application is checked for that profile and that the features you want that user group to have access to are enabled. And then finally, just go to your users tab and make sure that the people who need to have that privilege are added into the user list there. So between those few steps, you can enable that for the users in your organization and they can get started on evaluations.
Awesome. Thanks for showing us that, Mark. That was something, like I said, that we received earlier on from multiple people. So we wanted to make sure everyone got visibility into that. Now, I don't see any questions in the chat that were submitted. So John and Mark, looks like you guys did a great job answering any questions they might not have submitted. So thank you for that. But I do want to mention that the conversation does not end here. If you have any additional questions on QA, please feel free to reach out to us individually. I'll actually pull our our contact information up on the screen now. And let's make sure we've got that going up. So as you can see up on the screen is our contact information for anyone interested in reaching out. Please feel free to contact John, Mark, or myself if you'd like to chat more about what we discussed today or to share any other topics that you'd like to hear more about for our upcoming NICE Inform sessions. So like I said, the conversation does not end here. So wrapping up now, thank you to everyone who attended our session today and participated. We hope you were able to see the value that quality assurance can have on your employee retention and on your PSAP operations. So if anyone has any additional questions or is interested in adding NICE Inform Evaluator to their Inform suite, please do not hesitate to reach out to John. Now, thank you to both John and Mark for leading the discussion today and sharing their knowledge. And thank you to everyone who joined us. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.